All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time, you sent us T.A.E. Total Attack Elimination Pressure Point Self-Defense by Sifu William Lee. And we're diving right in. This is all about getting you up to speed on the essentials of this pressure point self-defense method. No wasted time, just the good stuff.
We'll be cutting through the clutter, giving you the key principles and techniques. All killer, no filler, right?
Exactly. And what's really interesting here is that Sifu Lee comes from this background in acupuncture, stress management, qigong, things you wouldn't necessarily link to, well, self-defense right off the bat.
Yeah, it's not your typical martial arts background.
But that connection to healing arts really hints at how T.A.E. views the body, as a system of energy.
Absolutely. And that's what we'll be uncovering in this deep dive. The philosophy behind T.A.E., why these specific pressure points are so crucial, and we'll even get into some of the techniques. By the end, you'll have a good understanding of this approach, like how to actually use it.
Perfect. So first things first, what does T.A.E. stand for?
T.A.E. is short for Total Attack Elimination. It's about neutralizing an attacker, stopping them in their tracks by targeting pressure points. The whole idea is to render them incapable of continuing their attack.
And Lee really drives home the simplicity of it, how it's designed for real-world situations, not for like some choreographed fight.
Right. It's not about scoring points or following rules. It's purely about stopping a threat as quickly and efficiently as possible.
And this is where it gets kind of fascinating. Lee talks about how he was hesitant to share this knowledge because, well, obviously it can be misused. But he ultimately decided to publish because he wanted to empower people, give them the tools to protect themselves.
That speaks volumes about his ethics, doesn't it? He's aware of the power of this knowledge. The whole point is to end the threat, not escalate it. It's about self-defense, not aggression.
And he really pushes the point that T.A.E. is for everyone, regardless of age, gender, size. You don't have to be a martial arts expert. In fact, you can even integrate it with any self-defense knowledge you already have.
Yeah, think of it as adding another layer of protection to your toolkit.
But it's worth mentioning, right, this book is only part one. Lee suggests that mastering basic striking is also crucial for a well-rounded approach to self-defense.
Right, so it's not a replacement for other methods. It's meant to complement them.
Now, when we talk about self-defense techniques that involve causing pain, the question of legality inevitably comes up.
And Lee addresses that directly. He argues that using pressure points correctly might be perceived differently by law enforcement and witnesses compared to, say, punches and kicks, because there's less of a visual, I guess you could say, aggressive display.
So instead of seeing someone being, thrown across a room, they might just see someone suddenly incapacitated. The pain's obviously there, but it doesn't have that same visual impact of, like, excessive force being used.
Yeah, there's a subtlety to it, both in application and perception.
But Lee stresses that to even consider this potential legal advantage, you can only use these techniques when it's absolutely necessary. It's not about seeking out confrontation or abusing the knowledge.
Right. Responsibility is key.
So let's get into the meat of it. These 13 pressure points. What makes these points so effective?
Well, this is where the connection to Eastern medicine becomes really clear. Lee explains that these are the same points used in acupuncture and acupressure, therapies that manipulate energy flow in the body.
So we're talking about the same points used for healing being used to, well, cause pain and disable an attacker.
Exactly. You see, the same sensitivity that makes these points responsive to therapeutic touch also makes them vulnerable in a self-defense scenario. When you manipulate them the right way, you can trigger immense pain and disrupt the body's normal functions.
And it's not like we're talking about, just any random points here. Lee emphasizes that these 13 points are located on key energy pathways that are essential for organ function. If you hit them correctly, it can cause excruciating pain and lead to some pretty serious reactions.
He even has a section titled, Not Something You Already Know.
Right. What he's saying is even if you've heard of pressure points before, the techniques he teaches in T.A.E. are specific, unique, and potentially more effective than, watered-down versions you might see elsewhere.
It's about that precise application, the angle, the amount of pressure, the exact location. Even slight variations can make a huge difference in a real fight.
And then there's the pain itself. Lee calls it a not ordinary type of pain.
He describes it as incredibly sharp, intense, unbearable, and often unexpected. It's the kind of pain that can cause a complete shutdown of the body and mind, basically taking the attacker out of the game, at least temporarily.
He even warns about being super careful during training because the pain can be that powerful.
Yeah, safety first. It's not about pushing through pain or seeing who can take more.
Then there's this concept that even child can take you down, which is a pretty powerful statement.
It really emphasizes that TA isn't about brute force or size. It's about leverage, about understanding the body's vulnerabilities. Even someone physically smaller or weaker can potentially neutralize a larger, stronger attacker if they know what they're doing.
He does mention that training children can be tricky because their hands are smaller and they need to be super accurate to hit those pressure points on an adult. But, the principle still stands. Knowledge can equalize the playing field.
So how does Lee suggest you go about learning these techniques?
He lays out a pretty practical approach. First, study the techniques, get familiar with them. Then, locate the points on your own body so you can actually feel where they are. Then, experiment a little, gently, just to get a sense of how pressure affects those points. And finally, train with a partner.
And that partner training is key. That's where you really start to develop the accuracy and understanding you need to apply these techniques in a real situation.
And this is where that big, huge warning comes in. A warning I can't stress enough.
Lee is very serious about this. You're dealing with techniques that can impair someone's ability to move, think, even breathe. He warns about the potential for internal injuries that might not be visible. And he really emphasizes that training should never become a pain tolerance contest.
It's all about safety and respect for the power of these techniques.
Absolutely. All right, are you ready to dive into some of the methods Lee describes?
Let's do it.
Okay, first up, LI4, the large intestine 4-point. Where's that one?
LI4 is on the back of the hand in that fleshy area between the thumb and index finger. You'll feel a little dip there. It can be kind of tender, even if you just press lightly. Lee says you want to press firmly downwards towards the bone with your strongest finger. And accuracy is key here. Even being off by a little bit can reduce the effect.
Got it. Now, ST9, the stomach 9-point, that one sounds like it's in a pretty delicate area.
Yeah, ST9 is on the front of the neck. It's on the edge of that big muscle that runs from behind your ear to your collarbone, the sternocleidomastoid. And it's right around where the base of your Adam's apple is. Lee specifically warns about the dangers here because it's so close to the carotid sinus nerve.
If I remember correctly, he says that messing with that nerve can cause someone to pass out. Or worse.
Exactly. That's why instead of a direct finger strike, he recommends hitting ST9 with the edge of your palm. It's less likely to cause those severe complications while still being super effective in a self-defense scenario.
So a broader impact rather than a focused strike.
Interesting. Okay, what about ST12, stomach 12? Where is that one hiding?
ST12 is right on your collarbone. About halfway between your breastbone and your shoulder, there's this little notch on the inside. Think of it as roughly above where most men's nipples are.
And how do you apply pressure there? Lee says to hook your middle finger behind the collarbone in that notch and pull downwards. Sounds kind of brutal, but he claims it can actually bring an attacker to their knees. The pain and loss of balance can be that overwhelming.
Wow. Okay, next we have GV26, the governing vessel 26 point. He refers to this as a rubbing point, right?
Right. So GV26 is located just above your upper lip, in the middle, about 2/3 of the way up towards your nose. It's basically where your upper teeth meet your gum line. And this one's especially useful when someone's got you in a hold, like a chokehold, or if they're pushing you.
So instead of striking, you rub.
You got it. You press and rub upwards on GV26 really firmly using the edge of your knuckles. You can use your other hand to support yourself or to control the attacker's head. It's meant to cause enough pain and surprise to break their grip.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, what about GB21 and TW15, the gallbladder 21 and triple warmer 15 points? Those are used together, right?
Yeah. They're both on that line that runs halfway between your spine and your shoulder joint. GB21 is a bit closer to your neck, right past your trapezius muscle. And TW15 is on the same line, but on the backside.
And you squeeze them.
Yep. Squeeze both points at the same time, thumb on GB21 in the front, fingers on TW15 on the back. Lee says a good squeeze here can force someone to their knees. It's about disrupting those nerve signals and causing intense discomfort. He even suggests using a seemingly friendly gesture, like putting your hand on their shoulder as a setup.
Clever. Okay, next up, the facial nerve point. Pretty straightforward name.
It is. This point is on the face, right under your lower canine teeth. There's this tiny little hole in the bone there. And pressing firmly on this spot can set off a whole chain reaction. It can force their mouth open, turn their head, relax their neck muscles, throw off their balance. Lee recommends pressing at a downward angle about 45 degrees for maximum effect.
One point with so many effects. Fascinating. Last but not least, SP6, The spleen 6-point. You find this one on the leg, right?
SP6 is on the inside of your leg, about 4 fingers above the top edge of your ankle bone. It's in that little dip where your tibia, your shin bone, meets the muscle. Lee suggests that if you hit this point with a solid object, it can seriously mess up someone's ability to stand.
And when does he see this being particularly useful?
He talks about a scenario where you're on the ground and the attacker is standing. You could use one hand to hold their ankle steady and then strike or rub SP6 with your elbow. This could give you a chance to get back on your feet and escape.
Smart. Now, Lee mentions these pressure point combos, but doesn't go into too much detail, right?
Yeah, he basically says that experienced martial artists will naturally start linking these points together. But he does give an example, starting with Li4 on the hand as a distraction, then moving to Li11 on the elbow to cause more disruption, then maybe hitting H3 on the arm to lead into striking the facial nerve point for a bigger impact. And if you have the opportunity, finishing with CV17 on the chest.
So a chain reaction of pain.
But the point he really emphasizes is that even if you just master 1 or 2 points and apply them precisely, that can be enough to completely neutralize a threat. You don't need to know dozens of combinations to be effective.
So, to wrap things up, what are the main takeaways from T.A.E., at least from this first part of Lee's book?
Okay, so basically, T.A.E. is about using the body's pressure points to defend yourself effectively and without needing to be some huge, strong person. Lee makes it very clear. This is just the foundation. There's more to learn. And he believes that T.A.E. is valuable for anyone interested in self-defense, whether you're a beginner or you've already got some experience.
And of course, that constant reminder to be incredibly careful while practicing.
These techniques are serious business.
Absolutely. And he ends by saying that if you're serious about self-protection, forget those movie fantasies. Prepare for real-life situations. Train consistently and responsibly. Never abuse your skills, and always keep learning. Yeah, and he mentions there are videos out there that can give you a better visual understanding of the techniques. So you've got a solid grasp of T.A.E. now. You know the principles, you know some key techniques, you're ready to start exploring further.
That's what these deep dives are all about, giving you the knowledge to, take your understanding to the next level.
And speaking of taking things to the next level, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If these pressure points are so sensitive, what else can we learn from them? Like beyond just self-defense, how can this knowledge be applied to healing, pain management, understanding the interconnectedness of the body, all that?
And then there's this idea that even a child could learn these techniques, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. I mean, it really shifts your perspective on self-defense and what it means to be safe, right? It's not just about size and strength anymore.
It's about knowledge, precision, leverage.
And knowing this stuff, well, it comes with a sense of responsibility, too. Knowing how vulnerable we all are, it changes how you interact with others, makes you more aware of the impact your actions can have.
Powerful stuff.
So, if you're intrigued by T.A.E., keep digging. Check out Sifu William Lee's other works, or maybe delve into the world of pressure points and their various applications.
There's a whole world of knowledge out there.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and stay safe out there.
See you on the next deep dive.